Okay, we'll be talking about Objective 2 for hazardous materials. This is Chapter 10 of the 8th edition of the Fire Inspection and Code Enforcement Manual put on by IFSTA. In this objective, we are going to kind of go over some of how we're going to identify what are the applicable codes and standards and that would pertain to hazardous materials and what is going to be important for us as fire inspectors. So the following is a list that summarizes what the major standards that are commonly adopted and enforced for storage, handling, and the use of hazardous materials. As far as ICC, the International Code Council, we have the IFC, which is the International Fire Code, International Building Code, the IBC, and the International Mechanical Code, the IMC. From NFPA, NFPA 1, which is their fire code, uh, 30 and 30A, which deals with the use of flammable and combustible liquids. So 30 and 30A, you got the liquid code, flammable liquid code, and then the motor vehicle fuel dispensing and repair garage code. NFPA 55, compressed gas and cryogenic fluid code. 58, the liquefied petroleum gas code, and NFPA 91, which is the standard for exhaust for air conveying of vapors, gases, mist, non-combustible particulars, solids. And lastly, as we've mentioned before, NFPA 400, the hazardous material code. So a lot of NFPA standards that in your jurisdictions, do you have the subscription to NFPA to access these codes? That's important because there are some things that are pretty relevant and pretty common in jurisdictions when it comes to especially flammable and combustible liquids. So uh, an NFPA subscription, I think, is critical for you to uh, be able to properly evaluate and determine an adequate exposure. Some of the other organizations that are relevant to hazardous material um, that we as inspectors may not have a lot of exposure to, but API, American Petroleum Institute. There are a handful of standards that you are relevant to evaluating hazardous materials as far as tanks, how they're put together, what they're used for, how they're inspected. So that's API 620, API 650, and ABI 653. Um, then the ASME standards, so American Society of Mechanical Engineers, uh, their standard B31.3, which is for process piping, and then their boiler and pressure vessel code, uh, Section 8, Division 1 and 2, are references that as inspectors, you may be looking at a business or an exposure to show you that these uh, that what you're looking at or trying to determine adequacy, how well it pertains to these standards and codes, and who's that subject matter expert that's going to be able to help you out. In ASTM, American Society of Testing and Materials, uh, you're going to be seeing uh, references to flashpoints and the volatility of certain materials. You may be using that as that reference or looking to make sure that things are adequate when you look at ASTM. Two more organizations that are relevant to looking at evaluating and determining adequacy of a hazardous material product process, compressed gas Association, CGA, and then Underwriters Laboratories, that's UL, have their own guides or standards when it comes to hazardous materials, depending on what they are. So if it's pressure relief devices or storage of inert gases in bulk or toxic gas mixtures, you know, the Compressed Gas Association has their standards to follow. And when we're looking at UL, uh, their standards and guidelines in regards to the storage, the handling of liquids, the different types of liquids, and the storage tanks that are used to handle those liquids. Those standards are referenced, or you'll be looking for those standards when it comes to making sure something is being stored adequately. So if it's UL 142, steel above ground tanks for flammable and combustible liquids, if you've got an above ground storage of that type of liquid, flammable and combustible liquid, you're looking at uh, making sure that they've got equipment and the materials are are being designed, installed, and used when you look at UL 142. The same goes with all those other UL standards as well.